Hi, my name's Larry Dignan from Constellation Insights, and welcome to CRTV episode 129. This week, we're going to debate whether the worst is over for SaaS and whether they finally got their AI game together. Mike Neat caught up with Google Cloud customer and Overdose CEO Paul Pritchard to talk shop, and I'm going to go through my tabs and show you 5 things you need to know. With that, let's get started with the debate. Hi, I'm Larry Dignan with Constellation Insights, and the debate this week is focused on whether the worst is over for SaaS. Esteban, let's start with you.
I don't understand. The whole SaaS apocalypse was based on pricing concerns. Once we solved that, which took about not even 2 days, then what are we talking about? Yes, the worst is over for SaaS. There's no problem. Continue growing. They figure out AI. All is good.
Well, part of the idea was everybody was going to use Claude, Codex, whatever, and roll their own software, and you wouldn't have to pay these hostage rates.
I saw a great post this morning from somebody who said, "This is my code before Claude," and it was one line that actually aimed to understand if the first letter of a word was a capital letter. And this is the code that Claude provided: 500 lines and $2.5 million in tokens to understand if the first letter is a capital.
And it's wrong 40% of the time.
Yeah.
Obviously Esteban's got a good point, but it's kind of simplified, right? About pricing and lock-in and all that kind of stuff. But no one's going to build entire systems or platforms anytime soon with vibe coding. But there are going to be some SaaS companies out there that aren't going to be around much longer, right? I think we can agree to that, right? That who provides value in this new age of agentic and vibe coding and all that kind of stuff, and who doesn't, will start to become more evident over the next few years.
I disagree. I think that all the SaaS vendors will remain because they have established footprint in the enterprise that cannot be dismantled. It's not just a question of vibe coding. I mean, it's a question of the value provided is beyond the simple interface, which is all that vibe coding can do. It's a simple interface. The value is in the intricate relationships and integrations and implementations in the back end, traction and integration with legacy that took like years to resolve. Things like that are not going to be replaced by vibe coding
in the enterprise. But I'm thinking of the point products that are out there in the SMB, SME that kind of just do one thing. And a lot of their implementers or users aren't necessarily integrating them with a lot of things. Or
there's no money in the SME. I mean, come on, seriously.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no money anyway, so these guys aren't going to be around much longer.
Okay, well,
the pittance like when you look at margin compression for companies that were doing 7% growth, and you know what I mean, like it's not going to be a good, it's not going to be great for some vendors, right?
You cannot tell me. I don't know if AI is doing it or it's just an excuse. There are so many zombie SaaS companies out there.
Yes.
And most of them owned by private equity, which, by the way, are watching bonds collapse as we speak.
Yeah.
I see a shakeout. What's unclear to me is whether AI is just an excuse for that shakeout or the cause of it.
I mean, look, the bottom line is like if a vendor went on the market and provided limited value that they eroded over time, they're not going to be around no matter what you call it and how you justify it. This is why all these companies that are in private equity are collapsing. It's because they had no value to provide. Yeah. That's beyond anything else. But if you are an established SaaS vendor with good legacy and implementations, take Teradata. How long has Teradata been around? I mean, Teradata is not going to private equity because it's a money machine. And that's because you can replace them. So if you establish yourself in a way that cannot be replaced, you'd be around forever.
We've talked about systems of record being the ones that kind of survive, and I think there was a bit of a shake on that. But now it's a system of value, right? Not even systems of action, people talking about it. But I think value is really what it comes down to. Do you provide value as a vendor, and is that not super commoditized, right?
If I spend 3 years and $25 million connecting my system to a database that is being held by duct tape and the hope that George never retires, then that's never going to be replaced.
AWS launched, they basically expanded Connect to, do talent, supply chain, healthcare, and, the customer call center stuff they were doing. And there was something Matt Garman said that kind of stuck with me. On the one hand, a lot of legacy SaaS providers, he pointed out Salesforce and a few others, are, they've revamped, absorbed AI, become better for it, etc. And he says that as he's basically trying to abstract away a bunch of enterprise apps. which side plays out, do you think? I mean, do you
I
agree
don't.
with
I don't
that?
think that Amazon. I don't think that Amazon is going to be a player in the SaaS world, because you can hire as many people as you want, but the DNA of the company is not aligned with what a SaaS company can do. EMC, BMC tried that in the 90s. CA tried that in the odds. I mean, companies that are hardware or that are like an infrastructure providers trying to get into software never works out. Connect is one of the examples of how it doesn't work. I mean, to me, Amazon Connect is a good, like, entry level tool setup, but it doesn't do more than that. And I don't think they're going to be able to expand that into an enterprise presence.
Their distribution model, how they go to market, like you said, some of that DNA just doesn't really match with how, enterprise software vendors are built and look. And, and there's companies that already know better. Google doesn't usually move into the space because it knows better. It knows it's not that kind of company in a different way that Amazon is, but I don't think it makes a ton of sense.
Well, that's it for this week's debate. We could probably debate this every week for probably the next year. All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Hi, Mike Nee, Constellation Research. I'm here with Paul Pritchard, Group CEO of Overdose and a high growth agency for digital commerce. And I know, Paul, you've been thinking a lot about AI and agentic commerce. I thought it'd be a good way to just hit one of the topics we're hearing a lot about here at Google Cloud Next, which is something we're hearing a lot about as well, which is, most enterprises don't have a data or AI problem. They actually have a meaning problem. And so, the question I'd turn to you is, when you think about, what you've been doing in terms of campaigns, you think about commerce, when does something like semantics become real to you?
So, it's great to be here, and thanks, Mike, for the introduction. We look at our clients, and we've seen a constant challenge with them with the disparate data sources, yes. Right? And with those disparate data sources comes a whole bunch of confusion and a whole bunch of work that has to sit on top of it to interpret it in the right way, right? And what we've got now is we've got a semantic layer that is powered by Looker that allows us to lay the truth in a foundation. That means that whatever we do on top of it is grounded. And if we've got a grounded truth, anything we do going forward is more impactful.
But when you've been doing this for a while, and so you've certainly recognized the signs. When did you realize you actually needed something like this?
I think we've always known that we had a challenge. I think only recently, in the last year and a half, have we been able to effectively resolve that challenge. And the thing that has grounded that has been the advances in technology, but more importantly, the demands from merchants to see things in real time and to be able to act in real time.
I think we've all been dealing with the shift in consumer expectations, and that has really been pushing the envelope a bit here. Can you talk a little bit about what you had to change? Like, what was some of the technology you had to bring to bear, and what did you have to change in your approach to commerce with Looker?
With Looker, it gave us the ability to move faster. We didn't have anything that we could really use before that. We had dashboards, we had BI tools, but all of those required lots of people to be able to do lots of intelligent things on top of them. Now, what we can do with small teams is build out an instance that ingests data through BigQuery into a semantic layer. The price point is really achievable for most of the businesses that we work with in the city landscape. But more importantly, it gives them the ability to take an insight and act on it quickly. And that semantic layer to consolidate all of that data into one truth is the magic that we haven't been able to have for a long, long time.
Well, I think you hit one of the key points that we always see. They turn to more reports, more dashboards, right? And you turned about coming back to a common definition, like how do we get to meaning? Can you talk about how that changed, how people go to market? How do you went to market with this? And what are the practices in your business?
Going to market with this has been natural because we always were challenged by our clients from a CFO point of view, a board point of view, marketing manager's point of view, and all of those points of view had a slightly different perspective on what was important to the business. The ability to now sit down with a client of ours and understand what the imperative metrics are in their business, things like profit, things like the effective kind of movement of stock, and things like customer acquisition that turns into customer lifetime value. Those are the important metrics. So the ability for Looker to consolidate that to that truth and then to give our teams and our clients' teams the same information at the same time focused on the same metrics has been so impactful.
Well, how did that change their practice? I mean, let's talk about pragmatically. How did that change their process? How did they use that to actually grow the business?
So from our process point of view, we used to spend a month building up to a dashboard
Right.
that we would then present at the end of the month, right? And
So
you
true.
And you can imagine.
And that's fast.
Yeah, but you can imagine what you're doing at that stage, right?
Right.
You're looking back on the performance of that month and you're comparing it year on year. What we now have is the ability to do that in real time, so no one's waiting for anything. What they can now do is they can build out an action-oriented plan based on real-time analytics. And those insights that you generate from that can be turned into action using generative AI, using analysts that are literally in your back pocket today.
Right.
And the best thing that can come out of that is that our merchants can move faster to engage with their customers.
Do you have a good example of where you've been able to use Gen AI to then use that to turn around the experience a bit?
So we've built a tool that takes the power of Looker and the semantic layer,
Right.
and the insights that can be generated from that. And that tool now has an autonomous action that can take an insight, build a creative brief, and then turn it into creative assets that can be published by ad channels. And then that Looker channel then consistently tracks performance to ensure that when we're ready, we can create new assets.
Right, and I think we were talking about this before. That really multiplied the ability to get to really much more segmented channels, channel specific that you want to get to, and by audience specific as well. Although, let me turn that around one more time, which is, we've been hearing a lot about one of the biggest problems, not just the technology, and sure, data is always a challenge. How did this change anything in terms of people or process, in terms of the enablement that was needed? Because that old rollout seems to be one of the biggest things that people are still struggling with.
I think anyone talks about AI and they talk about the impact on people.
Right.
From our perspective, this has enabled our people to be much more intelligent and act much faster. So instead of thinking about the reduction that everyone talks about, we think about the empowerment that it brings to our teams. And so now our teams are talking to our clients about impactful metrics rather than thinking about operational tool sets.
Well, we see the same thing. When you really start executing on these things, you start seeing the expansion of where the revenue opportunities are, and just means more people to manage the multiplication of what these agents are doing for you. Well, let's turn that around to you. You've seen them, more than a couple of these. Yourself has been right hands-on. Like, what are the numbers? What's the metrics that the CFO you were talking about before needs to be seeing, and how does that translate to the bottom line?
The reality of any business, whether it's our business or our client's business, is focused on how do we protect margin.
Right.
Right. So if you're spending money on producing products, or you're spending money on investing in talent, you have to get a return on that. And if you're not focused on the margin management within your business, then you are only focused on the vanity metrics, such as clicks and revenue.
Too true.
So our business now has been more profitable because what we've done is we've enabled our people to be smarter and to act with more value-oriented action towards our clients. And so we can do more with less, but most importantly, that more that we do delivers value.
All right, so we've heard about the changes on the technology, we've heard about the changes on the organization, as well as how does it drop to the bottom line. Is there one thing that you've learned that you think that data leaders, commerce leaders have to really know before they start embarking on this journey?
So I think the challenge that most leaders have at the moment is either a paralysis about where to start,
Okay.
or the inability to make the most of the partnerships that you have out there. So we've gained a lot of value working with Google and the GCP team, and they lean in really hard on what we are trying to do. Where we started first, though, was at that data layer. What we knew is that disparate data source leading to inconsistent reporting and every channel claiming the sale meant that there was a fight every day to figure out what the truth was. And when you get to that truth, beyond that is absolutely exponentially beneficial to you. So start with trying to get to the truth.
Right.
And once you've got that, anything's possible.
What I love about your story is that we see where success is, which is how do I take out a process at a time and start thinking about how I can actually start augmenting that decision. And you get back to a level of focus, a level of knowing what the end-to-end process is, and therefore using what AI is good at. Let's look at the overall context, not just little pieces like vanity metrics. How do we get to the end goal and how these pieces connect? to then deliver on real returns, and also the ability to get to very specific and a level of automation to more and more segments, more and more channels. And I think that's the dream of where marketers have been going to. Hey, so Paul, thank you so much. Any last words?
Yeah, I guess my last words is a business like Overdose, an agency trying to work with lots of merchants globally. You know, our biggest challenge was how to create some consistent context throughout our ability to interact with those clients over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So the information that we retain over that time should be able to be used in ways to continually inform and elevate and then create some innovation for those businesses. And I think through our partnership with Google Cloud, we've been able to do that in a consistent way. And we've been able to elevate that into action that is now generating more revenue, more margin, and more customer acquisition for our merchants.
Well, I love it. It's when I think about these AI native agencies, those who are actually starting to capture some of their business know-how, and the context now becomes part of their IP, and a flywheel where the more you do, the more your own context get better and better over time, and that comes through all your clients that you work with. Hey, Paul, this is a great story.
Appreciate
it, Mike. Hey, take it easy.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Larry Dignan, and welcome to this week's 5 Tabs, a look at 5 things that you need to know from recent news events and stuff I'm covering on Constellation Insights and the notebook it comes with. Let's get started. So first off, thing to know, all the cloud hyperscalers have reported earnings. They've talked a lot about vertical integration, and the main thing to look at here is what AWS has done. They've basically taken their Connect, which was basically a contact center application, and basically turned into a family focused on talent, supply chain, healthcare, and a couple other things. Where it gets interesting is Amazon Quick, which basically looks to do what Cloud Co-work is doing to SaaS. Basically connecting a bunch of things by API, adding some IP to it, and basically being a UI layer with some extra workflow kind of stuff on the back end. For Amazon, this is really about becoming more vertically integrated, and Amazon Quick and Connect is a way to do that. Remains to be seen how this works out with SaaS vendors, but it's definitely worth watching. Google Cloud. While we're on the topic of vertical integration, Google Cloud is absolutely killing it. First quarter revenue growth was up 63%. Revenue was 20 billion, which puts them on an annual revenue rate of 80 billion, which is a little more than half of AWS's size in terms of annual run rate. So where this gets interesting is Google Cloud Next featured a lot of vertical integration, and Google Cloud basically is the most fleshed out AI stack when it comes to models, TPUs, all that good stuff. So it really looks like they're in the pole position, at least in terms of growth. The other thing we're looking at very closely is ServiceNow's Knowledge Conference this week. Big thing they have going on is the AI Control Tower. There are a bunch of updates. There's an assistant called Otto. And where it gets interesting is the AI Control Tower now has a value calculator where it basically looks at your AI spend and your agent performance and a bunch of other things to look at your AI returns. Call me crazy, but I think this could be a killer app for the AI Control Tower because it actually tries to wrangle what every enterprise is thinking about right now. Where are the returns? What's my token spend? And all that nasty stuff under the surface once you get beyond the hype. So I think for ServiceNow, the AI Control Towers, this update where you're calculating AI value is going to be a big deal. And definitely something worth watching. This represents what Apple said about their supply chain, memory constraints, all that good stuff on their fiscal third quarter earnings call. And what you see is iPhone supplies are getting crimped, Mac supplies are getting really crimped in the quarter. Memory costs are going to be an issue starting this quarter and then really ramping into the next quarter after that. The other thing they noted was Macs are going to be in the supply situation for Macs is going to be very tight. And that's largely because people are buying Mac Minis and Mac Studios to play with OpenClaw and all this Agentic AI kind of stuff. So definitely something worth watching there. But my guess is every hardware vendor, every device maker is going to get hit by these same things, especially the memory. What remains to be seen is what gets passed on to the customer. Final point I'll leave you with, when you look at AI, software, everything's a software company, everything's going to become an AI company. This slide came from GM's earnings. They talked about how software and services is becoming, a bigger growing portion of their revenue base for Super Cruise as well as OnStar subscriptions. By itself, it didn't really stick out to me because, Ford says something similar with their Ford AI efforts. But then I looked at Rivian, and Rivian, they have the R2 coming out. It's going to be the latest, greatest Rivian. They really don't ship a lot of units in terms of vehicles. Where it gets interesting, though, is software and services revenue was up 49% from a year ago. Part of this is, maintenance, updates, things like that. But the other part of this is basically they're making the software for Volkswagen, which is a big investor in Rivian and a partner. I just think it's something to watch because if you look at Caterpillar, you look at all these other vendors that you wouldn't think as tech firms, software is a bigger part of the mix, and so is AI. So it's just something to watch going forward.
AI is making everyone faster, but is it making teams better? That is why Canvas 26 caught my attention. Miro is bringing together leaders at their conference who are asking a very practical question. How do teams build, collaborate, and make decisions when AI becomes part of the work? AI is already helping individuals move faster. The harder part is helping move teams together. That is why I am going to Canvas 26. Miro is putting a spotlight on a problem that I hear from many leaders. How do you turn AI-assisted work into coordinated team outcomes? A product manager can pressure test an idea in minutes. A designer can generate concepts almost instantly. An engineer can explore multiple implementation paths faster than ever before. A team lead can summarize research, meetings, and decisions without starting from scratch. But faster individuals do not automatically create better aligned teams. In fact, AI can amplify small gaps that already exist in organizations. Teams can generate more ideas, more plans, more prototypes, and more analysis, but still struggle with the same basic questions. What are we actually building? Why does it matter? Who needs to be involved? What trade-offs are we making? And how do we keep everyone moving in the same direction? This is the real collaboration challenge when AI is accelerating the work. As AI moves deeper into everyday's work, organizations need operating models, workflows, and shared context that helps teams move together. Shared context is becoming infrastructure. It is how product, engineering, design, and technology leaders connect strategy to execution. It is how teams move from isolated AI experiments to coordinated product outcomes. It is how organizations make sure AI helps teams make better decisions, not just produce more output. Miro is moving beyond digital whiteboarding into a broader collaboration layer for teams that are turning ideas, plans, and decisions into action. That is why Miro is on Constellation shortlist. We see this category moving beyond shared canvases into platforms that help cross-functional teams structure work, use AI, and move from ideas to outcomes. AI can accelerate the work, but alignment is what turns faster work into better outcomes. Canvas 26 is built around that conversation. I'm looking forward to Canvas 26 because I want to hear how leaders are turning AI-assisted work into better team outcomes. If that's a conversation you are having, you should consider going there too. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for episode 129. Next time, we'll have Liz Miller with episode 130. In the meantime, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on LinkedIn, where we're all very active, and X at CRTV. Cheers and have a good week. Hi, my name is Larry Dignan, and welcome to CRTV. All right, here we go. Hi, my name is Larry Dignan. I'm here with, I'm not here with anybody. Nice.
You know, I think we have several in for the running for the resident curmudgeon. It's a close.
Hey.
Oh, I am not nearly as curmudgeon as Esteban.
Hey.
I haven't even graduated that level yet. I was waiting for Esteban to nod or something.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm ready. Let's go.
Are we ready? And Esteban.
Yeah, what are we in the exit row? Like you need to feel like a verbal yes.
If you
Just
like.
like, you know, yeah, kick me off.
That is such a useful tool.
Okay.
The sound effects. I'm making use of those at some point.
Yeah, please do. Okay.
And that's a wrap for this CRTV. Next time, pay attention for. Do that again.